Chapter 26. Decisions. Politics and trade. These are two horses that pull the ponderous coaches of civilization. So, when the fighting stopped in Copa, the politicians and merchants flooded in to win the peace. The Thaliani may have led the charge, but every family, minor and major, was jostling for a piece of prosperity. In all the excitement, no one saw the carefully laid intrigue of the Invenum Morsum. One enemy had sought to kill Kerne and thought him dead. But now, the other enemy, who had watched and waited, sensed the time was right. Why take an opponent's piece off the board when you can make it your own? Jorwin Weaver, The Keetish Cycle. Was he dreaming? Praeto knew he had to be. The Magister's hospitality, the laughing girls, the spiced wine, the sensual strokes of the paintbrush, the narcotic incense. That had all been a haze, yet now his vision was sharp and his mind wakeful. It was just the rest of the world that seemed to be lost in a dream. He stood in infinite darkness as luminous threads streamed past him. It was as if he was deep in the current of a river that he could neither see nor feel. He looked down where the vapors ran thickest over his feet. The glow of the wisps was one source of illumination. The other was his own skin. Painted glyphs and sigils glowed with a ghostly light on his bare torso, as if they touched his soul. Where am I?
At a moment of decision, a moment of liberation.
He recognized the crisp and polished voice. Magister?
Yes, I am only here to guide you. Now you can decide your own destiny. Who are you?
The robed Magister emerged from the flowing strands of light and raised his hands.
Remain divis.
Spheres bobbed from the darkness. Some were polished black, others dusty gray. One of each floated within Prato's reach, the black on his right and the gray on his left.
Take the gray.
Prato did as he was told. After all, that was what he was good at. It was chalky, the surface bleeding with a fine powder that trailed into the unfelt current. A memory emerged. He watched a boy of 6 following the monks from the market round. A young Leusios was striding ahead without care for his shorter legs, and he had to break into a jog to catch up from time to time. He knew the boy's every thought. Why should I bother? The boy scowled. He slowed down in defiance. Mikrig, his older brother Hunthrig, and the other boys waited for a gap between him and the monks to open up. Then they stepped out.
"Why you here, half-breed?"
Hunthrig demanded. The boy saw the threat and summoned his training to calm his mind.
"To agree the tithe. To steal our food, you Drethic bastard,"
piped up Mikrig. "No, to protect you," he almost said from orcs, but cut the words off lest they be thrown back at him.
"Protect yourself, animal."
Then the stone-throwing started. He hadn't been prepared for that, and one split the skin on his brow. He blinked blood from his eye as he fumbled for a stone of his own.
"Drop that!"
Elayna was upon him, cuffing aside the heavy flint.
"Are you so thin-skinned that you would retaliate at the first blow?"
The other boys fled, laughing. He wanted a retort that would both explain and make his position righteous, but words failed him. The humiliation was crushing.
"You're not permitted to even defend yourself?"
The Magister sounded wounded on his behalf, and the memory faded. To strike back would have just encouraged a spiral of conflict, he said, recalling the mantra, while doubting its wisdom.
"Do not defend those who forbade you from defending yourself,"
reasoned the Magister.
"Let us see for ourselves what you can achieve when you are your own master. Take the black."
He opened his right hand to receive the smooth sphere. The next memory wrapped around him. He was now 9 years old and caught between two huts. Miekrig and the other boys had blocked both escape routes.
"Where's your brother, Miekrig?" he sneered. "Doesn't he fight your battles?"
The other boy flushed.
"We can take you, Drethek."
"If you're so brave, Miekrig, why don't you face me alone?"
"Would a hunter face a bison alone? Don't be an idiot, Drethek. You're an animal. We have to teach you to admit it."
They had sticks, not fighting staves, but weighty enough to hurt. To attack first is to weaken your position and expose yourself, Leusios had taught him. Never be the first to strike for both moral and tactical reasons. Well, scorch that. He saw that Greg was holding his stick loosely. He struck lightning quick and snatched it. Before anyone reacted, he leapt towards Miekrig with a yell. Left and right he struck, stunning two boys and scattering the others as he bore down on the ringleader. Miekrig went white but stood his ground, swinging his own stick. The half-orc boy ducked the blow easily. Gripping his weapon with both hands, he swung with all his might. The stick broke on Miekrig's jaw and lifted him off his feet. The remaining boys screamed and fled. He stood over Miekrig's stunned form, panting with exhilaration. Only one other person saw it. A boy of 4 or 5 sitting on a cart laden with sacks, waiting for his father, the miller. The youngest boy stared at him from under his fringe of bone-white hair, curious rather than intimidated. He growled, making the little boy cringe, and then stalked away. That night he would be punished, but
in that moment you felt powerful, did you not?"
said the magister, nodding. He found himself nodding along. Yes, he had felt free and formidable. The magister smiled warmly.
"So you should, for you were righteous in your wrath, vindicated. Which of these memories makes you the person you want to become? The victim or victor?"
That was easy. The victor. He clenched his left hand and crumbled the gray sphere to dust. It bled away into the strange current that flowed unseen around him. The magister held out a hand to receive the polished black sphere.
"This is your destiny. This is when you leave behind all the names you have known and become reborn in the manner of your choosing, not from the will of another. Give me the first step upon your chosen path."
Praeto released the black sphere into the other man's hand.
"Now, choose again."
The magister waved his hand at the other dozen spheres. Black and gray, they hung in rotating binaries, bobbing in the invisible river of memories. Those. He chose a new pair. The moment he did so, they floated down to him, the black to his right and the gray to his left. The gray hurled him back through the scornful beatings of teenage years. Powerless, resentful, he endured it. When he took the black, it opened to a moment of glory. His anger exploded. Enough! He snatched the beating rod from Leusios and cast it aside. He rose from where he'd been kneeling in front of the first shrine, his back still smarting. The song of the shrine in his head became a wail of horror. "Do you expect me to kneel here and just take abuse from you?" He bellowed at Father Abbot Elayna Gutarius. The abbot did not flinch.
"I do, until you learn the discipline to succeed as one of us."
"One of you? You don't want me. You never wanted me," the teenage half-orc shouted. "And I don't want you."
"You are one of us, even if neither of us chose this path,"
snapped Leusios.
"You must learn that true strength only comes from discipline. Without discipline, there is only chaos."
The boy snarled contemptuously and picked up the stone basin he and the other monks used to wash before prayer. It was huge, yet his teenage muscles were already larger than those of a powerful man. "See how strong I am?" Several monks scurried out of reach. Leusios was unmoved.
"Strength without discipline is just violence."
"Says you."
"Said your mother."
His mother. His anger doubled.
"I had a mother, but you are no father, Abbot."
"No,"
growled Leusios.
Your father was a beast roaming the steppes.
The anger ignited into blind fury. The half-orc roared. He started to swing the basin to crush the old man, but sinews of decency held him back. But the stone already had momentum. With a scream of frustration, he twisted and hurled it away.
No!
Leusios' voice rose in alarm for the first time. Monks stood agape, and even the half-orc teenager felt a cold wash of fear as the stone basin arced through the air towards the sacred shrine. It struck it hard. The white marble exploded. The monastery shook with the detonation. He'd never seen Father Abbot Scutarius speechless until this glorious moment. His face was white, and his jaw was taut. Then he flushed red.
You blasphemous fool!
Leusios shrieked and pointed at the smoothness of the Blackstone, where the shrine had once been attached. Only a ghostly outline of dust remained. Leusios' accusing finger swung onto him, trembling with a rage that he struggled to give voice to. He faced into the abbot's fury with an anger of his own. He had hurt Leusios and would not yield his small victory. His knees were weak with horror, but his chest swelled with triumph, and his cheeks burned with indignation. When Leusios finally found his words, they were spoken in a wrathful whisper.
Your first accursed breath took your mother's life. I should have cut your throat.
The accusation made his eyes sting with angry teenage tears and hardened his heart further.
I didn't kill her, but you did fail her and me.
He spat into the debris of the shrine.
So, I'll get out of your life.
You're not walking away from this,
Leusios screamed.
You are banished from this place, defiler!
The abbot collected himself for a moment, and then continued in a voice seething with damnation.
Seize him!
The half-orc raised his fists to ward off two monks who moved to grab him.
No, you're not getting the last word this time. I'm leaving. Why force me to break our brethren's bones in trying to score your final point?
He spun on his heel.
They're not your brethren anymore!
Leusios retorted to his back as he strode away. Praeto studied the black sphere in his hand, uncertain of what victory it represented.
You won,
the magister reassured him.
You stood up to the old tyrant and rejected the life that would never have worked for you.
He placed a hand on his heart and echoed the teenage half-orc's words.
He failed her and you. She would have been proud of you.
Yes, it would never have worked, nodded Praeto. That was true. He had reflected on that fact many times and never doubted that he had to leave. But the circumstances. Uncalled memories, unseen by the magister, emerged from the flow around him. In one, a girl pointed at him while talking to her father. She had golden hair and chestnut eyes, and projected curiosity and concern. Her sense of care touched him and made his heart skip a beat.
Put your hood up,
one of the brethren had snapped. He had complied, but stole one last glance at her. Next came another memory of the same girl. It was from the day when he had shattered the shrine. He fled the monastery, running along the riverbank, past the cemetery and to the ford. He looked north to the mountain pass, and then south to the village. Mikrig and the hunters blocked his path, but beyond them he saw the beautiful girl talking to a white-haired boy. Looking at him and the hostile gang, her hand rose to her mouth in fear and worry. Her concern for him, a half-breed outcast, touched him from across the market round, across the ford, and now, caught in the moment, across the gulf of time between then and now. That day, prejudice and ignorance had blocked his path to her, as it would time and time again. But who was stopping him now? The magister interrupted his wandering thoughts.
You proved yourself strong enough to be your own person,
he reassured him firmly.
You broke free from a prison the monks built around you, not just of stone, but of rules and guilt.
The magister took the black sphere from him and pressed it against the first. With a shimmering of shadowy flame, they merged into one. The new sphere had a faint pulse like a heartbeat.
Now, choose again,
Globes of hurtful memories paired with moments of glory and pride spun towards him. He ran with the orcs, hunted their prey, and killed their enemies. Every time he crushed the grey into chalky dust, he grew ever more distant from the self-doubting weakling he had been. Every time he passed a black sphere to the Magister, he embraced the great warrior, the killer. He felt himself grow more confident, more powerful. The glyphs painted on his body shone brighter, and the current around him grew stronger. He killed Kukrak a second time. Reveling in his bloody victory, he accepted the adulation of the other orcs. Exhilaration and liberation, it thrilled him. "Why have I never seen it like this before?" he cried out as the Magister took and merged his sixth black sphere into a glittering black crystal that throbbed with a purple-black fire. "Because you have not had a guide until now. That is why you call me Magister. Because I am the only friend who can inspire you to choose your own path when others have failed. Now, for your seventh and final choice." He gestured towards two large spheres that wafted towards him. Praeto reached out decisively, catching both of them. He knew what the final choice would be, and could guess what the black sphere held. Dozens of blood-soaked victories across the desert as Frangios, Kutal, and Praeto. His true destiny lay one more decision away. He just had to put to rest one last humiliation on the muddy margins of the Ruthial. He grasped the dusty grey orb. The wooden bolt to Elayna's door shattered. Time slowed. He felt detached as the fragments spun through the air with a lazy ease. He sneered at the half-naked fool being tended to by the woman, the idiot who thought she could make him accepted as a human. He watched the half-orc rise and spin protectively in front of the female as the hunters charged through the door, spear butts ready to beat him.
"Mikrik, how dare you? Leave me home!"
Elayna shouted. He watched himself, magnificent in his fury, lunge forward and grab one haft and dodge another. He turned and pulled the spear from the grip of one hunter. Greg again, he observed, still careless all these years later. A haft caught him a glancing blow on the side of his head. He struck out with the spear in retaliation. Mikrig swung at him from the right. He blocked it and rammed the spear at his foe. He watched in awe as his other self fought the blur of halves, dodging, weaving, parrying, and then attacking. Greg cried out and fell back, clutching his leg. He saw the blood and grinned. Mikrig had circled around him and swung from behind.
"Watch out!"
Elayna grabbed for the spear. The blow intended for the back of his head struck her instead. The hunter cursed and tried to strike again, but the half-orc was aware of him now and parried the next attack. Mikrig had struck Elayna. Not him. Not Kerne. His heart tightened as he saw Elayna fall, knowing what would come next. The half-orc swung about and saw her sprawled on the floor. The emotion of the memory rose like water over a drowning man. Its pull was overwhelming and sucked him under. He plunged into his other self, desperate to reach Elayna, to hold her, to protect her. The staves started falling. The worst pain of his life was upon him again.
"Why are you doing this?"
the Magister demanded, surprised.
"You should be the victor, not the victim. It is for you to deal out punishment, not receive it. Break free from this memory and cast it aside forever."
But Kerne just laughed. The most sublime joy of all, redemption, made his spirit soar, even as his body was being battered. "Didn't you see it? It wasn't me!" he cried out in relief.
"You know what is going to happen,"
warned the Magister urgently.
"This is not your choice. Come back and taste the glories of victory."
The heart of the black sphere beckoned him with a flash of flame. Incredulity, anger, surprise. All those emotions swirling around the Magister made sense. But Kerne also saw something else. "Why are you afraid?" he asked. A rib broke. A pain exploded in his side, but it didn't matter. This was the past. It was already part of him. It would always be part of him. And if mastered, it would make him stronger. Leusios had taught him that. The agony released him. They were standing back in the streaming threads of memory.
"I'm not afraid," the Magister asserted. "You have seen the great warrior you have become, and even greater acclaim awaits you. It is your only way to fulfillment."
The half-orc looked at the spheres still in each hand. But it isn't as simple as that, is it? Life is never a choice between two paths. Sometimes we make bad choices, but that doesn't stop us making better ones the next day. To deny a part of myself, I must let that part die? Why? Why live as half a person? I'm not half orc. I'm not half human. No, I am wholly Kerne. The Magister considered him, his dark eyes glittering.
"You have always been a half-person. I can make you whole."
He smiled and took a step towards the Magister, full of gratitude. "No, don't you see, Magister? Thanks to you, I know that I did not strike Elayna. I defended her, and she's alive. My guilt is a lie."
Thanks to me?"
The Magister repeated aghast, and then flushed with anger.
"I think you need to remember how much they made you suffer."
He plunged back into the memory. Agony erupted from every fracture, every bruise, every bloody cut. The chill of the river mud pierced him to his marrow. He groped in the icy margins, struggling to all fours, dripping cold water and dying.
"You're dangerous,"
Leusios shouted angrily.
"You'll kill her. If not today, you will tomorrow. We don't want you here. No one wants you here. Back into the river, animal."
A kick struck him, breaking another rib.
"No!"
he roared and rose from the mud, defiant of his deepest hurts. Leusios backed away, startled.
"You lied to me."
Kerne pointed an accusing finger at him.
"You said I hit her. You said she was dying."
His mother's amulet, forgotten on his chest, exploded into radiance. The Keetish night shredded into a wild current of streaming threads, and his ears roared as if under a waterfall. Leusios's face was torn away to reveal the Magister. He stared at the man.
"What part did you play in this?"
"None."
The Magister licked his lips nervously.
"You have a great enemy. An ancient Elayth called Atraxian sought your death. As allies, I can protect you. We can defeat him together. You've already embraced life as the greatest of warriors."
Kerne slowly shook his head and said one word, soft yet firm. "No." The Magister scowled. The threads coiled and flowed as the silence stretched out.
"No matter,"
the other man growled.
"My power is already etched into your soul and your 6 choices, damn you."
The Magister snapped his fingers, and the glyphs on Kerne's skin burst into purple fire. He gasped and buckled. The radiance of the amulet wavered. The Magister raised the black crystal mass, and it pulsed with a demonic flame that sucked in the light. Then he reached out a hand made into a claw.
"Pick the savang!"
Kerne screamed as his chest split, and his heart slammed back against his spine.
6 times you committed to this path. You've given too much of yourself to deny me now."
The Magister grinned viciously.
"I have a new heart for you. With it, you'll need never feel guilt again."
There was a chain of pops as each of his ribs broke free. He shrieked in agony, his strength hemorrhaging in a gush of blood. The Magister leered as he pushed the black heart in.
"Be at peace. Your final name will be Obedient of Morsos."
He still had a sphere in each hand. The black sphere, still clutched in his right hand, was burning his palm. He let it go. Left hand. His brain screamed at him urgently through the madness of his torment. He raised it and saw the dusty gray sphere. "This is my destiny!" he cried, and it burst into a white incandescent beacon. His chest filled with a bitter cold as the black crystal mass began to crush his heart, taking its place. He swung his arm and smashed the brilliant sphere on the side of the Magister's head. It exploded into dazzling shards of light. The streaming vapors spun into a whirlpool that tore him free and spun him around and around into a blur. He woke on an obsidian slab in a stone chamber lit by brass bowls of burning oil. He heard the echo of a cry die away. He sat up and gasped from scorching lines of pain over his body. Inked sigils and glyphs flickered with fire and burned away, leaving a web of clean red welts. Doubting his own eyes, he touched his chest to reassure himself it was whole. He resisted a last shudder at the memory of its bursting open. Feeling his head clear, he looked around and saw the Magister stretched out on his back, blood running from his nose. Symbols painted in blood and the paraphernalia of cultist magic surrounded the obsidian slab in concentric circles and made triangles pointing inwards like the jaws of a trap. As he moved to leave the ritual ring, his foot caught on a figure swathed in black silk. He staggered and turned back to look. It was one of two forms, both wrapped head to foot and arranged as part of the ritual, one at his feet and the other at his head. He recognized the perfume of the whores from the night before. His hands shaking, he lifted the cloth wrap and flinched. If it was one of the girls, he could not identify her from the skeletal husk. She'd been sucked dry, just like the victims of the mage hound so long ago in Blackstone, consumed by the Magister's dark ritual. He backed away, shivering with revulsion. What now? The room was quiet, except for the soft rippling of the flaming bowls of oil.
How did I let this happen? He gasped. How could I come so close to damnation?
The stone chamber gave no answer. There was only evil here. He straightened up. Yes, evil. He'd never seen it so revealed, so evident. He put his foot to the oil bowl and kicked it hard. It fell, and a deluge of flame washed across the stone floor. Certainty that he had never felt before took hold of him. As the flames grew hungrily around him, driving the shadows to the corners, so the song of the amulet soared in his mind, and a whisper echoed within his soul. It said no words, but it felt full of two pure, entwined emotions, love and pride.
I'm not going to run from you, he declared to the empty space.
I know who I am now, Morsos. My name is Kerne, son of Elayna, student of Father Abbot Leusios Scotarius. And everywhere I meet you, I will fight you.
That's the end of Chapter 26, Decisions. In the next and penultimate chapter, Leusios and Vibnia enter the Blackstone itself to discover what is hidden there, while Elayna closes in on her father's assassin. Thanks for being part of this adventure. If this chapter inspired you, share it with someone who'd love it too. See you next week.